The House Gaming Oversight Committee to order. Will stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Representative Payne.
Here.
Brown. Here. Diamond.
Here.
Dunbar. Helm. Here. Kauffer's on leave. Klunk. Here. McKenzie's on leave. Mosser. Here. McRelly's on leave. Nelson. Nesbitt.
Here.
Fortitag.
Here.
Parker. Santora.
Here.
Warner. Representative Kotick. Bradford. Costa's on leave. Davis. DC. Flynn. Gainey. Kavulik. Quartz. Nielsen. And Rozzi's on leave.
Yeah, and for the record, Chairman Kotick saw me about a half an hour ago, said he will be here. He's running about 10, 15 minutes late, but he will be here. Thank you. This morning we have, and I'm pretty sure you guys are all sitting together, correct?
We're all here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Mike, Tony, Jonathan, if you please come up. Today's hearing is on the small games of chance, both, if you will, today and in the future. And I'm excited about your presentation.
Chairman Payne and members of the committee, my name is Mike Philbin, and on behalf of the PA Gaming Alliance, I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you again to discuss, this time to discuss small games of chance in Pennsylvania. The laws, we talked before, the laws have not been changed since 1989, and the ideas that we're going to give you today are things that all the other states around us are doing that Pennsylvania is just sort of behind the times. Our group represents approximately 100 manufacturers and distributors throughout Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of distributors that go outside. John Smith is one of the largest distributors, and if not the largest distributor in the country. So he's got a number of states, so he'll speak on how he deals with the laws in other states. Tony is a manufacturer in Pennsylvania, out in Wheatland, Pennsylvania, and he'll talk about the manufacturing end of what we do. I'm trying to save you some time because I do want to show you some things that we didn't have here.
Yeah, Cliff Note testimony
Right.
is fine with the committee, I'm sure. And we're anxious about your actual visuals.
Back in 1988 is when the most of these laws were enacted. So one of the things that they enacted was a $35,000. Well, that's one thing. It was $25,000. Now it's $35,000 weekly payout. And what the $35,000 weekly payout means is, if a game has 4,000 tickets and they sell for $1 a piece, the club will pay out $3,000. The club will make $1,000 in profit. Hence, the $3,000 is what is added up to the $35,000. Most mid-level to upper-level clubs meet that by Thursday or Friday of the week. So, and honestly, I don't know why they ever put that in there. One of the key things that is in there is that you're supposed to pay out 65% of whatever you take in. So one of the things that we would propose to you is there's no limit to how much they can pay out. That's going to generate more money for the charities as well as the fire companies and the clubs that are involved. Most of the states don't have limits. Around us, West Virginia, Ohio, Virginia, New York, Kentucky, New Jersey, none of those states have a maximum amount that the club can pay out in a week. I mentioned earlier that a lot of the tickets that we sell have 4,000 tickets. back in 1988, and I've been doing this even before 88, 4,000 tickets, we weren't even close to 4,000 tickets. Most of the games were 2,000, 2,500. So I'm assuming they just went higher because they thought that it would progress to that. Today, outside of Pennsylvania, there's 12,000 count, 25,000 count. But they're still paying out to 65%, so it doesn't really matter. That the player's still getting, in fact, a lot of times we're at 75 and 80% when we get up to those high counts because we want to turn over the tickets and keep the players playing. So one of the things we would propose is to eliminate the number of tickets in the game. The one thing that I'm going to show you today is we've talked about progressives and we've talked about subsets. This game here is a subset. Now, what that means is if we use the 4,000, there's 4,000 tickets in this whole box. And what the manufacturer's done is put 200 tickets in each bag. The reason why this is important is the small fire companies that maybe don't have a lot of people playing bingo can sell 200 tickets without a problem. And they can offer, in this case, up $500 in prizes and keep the players playing. So what happens is they sell the 200 tickets. The people will get a ticket that has what they call a holder. It says a number, like this one says number 13. So the person would sign their name here saying that's what they're going to, that's their number. So after all these 200 tickets are sold, they'll pop this seal. And when they pop the seal, it says number 3 is the person. So the number 3 gets to come over to this board and pick a seal. Now, the Department of Revenue won't, even though it's 4,000 tickets, the whole game pays out 75%. Department of Revenue has decided that they don't like subsets because if the person wins $75, okay, this game is only paid out 44%. If the person wins the $500, it's paid out 256%. So, but when you add it all together as one game, it's 75% is what they're paying out. And you go to other states, and this is a big game for them, especially for, as I say, especially for the small clubs, because they can sell. They don't have to sell all this in one night. They can sell 1 or 2 or 3, get some play, and maybe next week the 500s are still there, so the people will buy even more. Just as when the lottery numbers go up, then that's when the people play more. So that's what a subset is. Does anybody have any questions on the subset before I?
Anybody in the committee have questions at this stage? Yeah, hold on. Representative College.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's not played all at once, as you said, if they don't have a big winner the first week, if you do have the big winner the first week, does it knock down the sales?
No, because there's still
Subsequent
enough. There's still enough bigger winners here.
Oh, okay.
Now, if all the bigger winners are here, what would probably happen is they probably finish that game once all the bigger winners, and then bring a new game out. But they carry it from week to week until the game's completely done, or the only thing left. Maybe there's only 2 $75 winners left, and they know that. So the club will, and the state allows that, to discontinue the game and bring out a new game to restart the process.
And you said these are very popular in other states.
Oh, yes. We used to run them in Pennsylvania until the Department of Revenue decided that you weren't allowed to have subsets. And it was one of our biggest sellers. And this is 10 or 12 years ago, maybe longer.
Sure. Representative Nielsen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly where I'm going. So the Department of Revenue, even though you say the payout meets our standards, and you don't stop selling these tickets, so it's not like, and they just decided to do that?
It is in part of the regulations. Under pull-tab manufacturing standards, every other, I shouldn't say every, most of the states allow this. They have in here that a deal may not be segregated into a sub-deal or portions as part of the deal may be distinguished or played separately from the rest of the game.
So is that a legislative change or a regulation change?
I think that's a regulative.
Have a copy of that for the chairman so he can
Yep.
get that to us, please?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank
See
you, Mr.
that,
Chairman.
see that Josiah gets that, and we'll run.
Yep.
We'll scan it and send it out to all the members.
Okay. So,
Question
keep
question
going.
for you,
Yep.
so that I understand.
Anybody else?
Yeah, yes, right behind you, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's all right.
But given a scenario where you would potentially have 3 rounds of tickets sold, 2 75s and let's say a 200, what would that percentage be as compared to the requirement? Because in those games, shouldn't the purse or the total winning increase as the volume of revenue
Yes.
as part of that game?
Yes, I mean, if somebody won, now what they're looking at is one game. So if the as I said, if the 75 is won, it's 44%. If they win 100, it's 57%. If they win the 200, it's 106%. So and then the 500 is 246%.
But the final payout and profit is defined and does not change. Once all the deals subsets are sold, it is a defined profit and payout, just like any other pull tab game.
So is that where the conflict
Yes.
rests?
They look at this as being a deal and not looking at all of this. Even though they're all the same serial number. Every one is the same serial number. And it has a letter after it, so we know there's 20 games.
Well, just as a follow-up, so the percentage actually is diluted to the player. Is that correct? In the overall, if you have 3 series of games and you're selling 3 sets of those tickets and you have 2 75s and a 200, then what would the percentage of payout across those 3 games be?
Well, it would probably be more like 50 or 60%, but you still have the bigger winners. They're not the fire company makes $990. The only thing that they're going to do is make maybe $100 or $200. Let's say they paid to 75. Okay, the only thing they're going to make $125. They're not going to end it. That's about what this game cost. Okay, so they're not going to end it. They've got to keep going to get their $900. So even if, as I said, if a couple 75s are left and people stop playing it, so they're gonna lose $400 in sales or about $200 in profit by pulling it early. But they've still made the percentage. They've still paid out the 75%, or actually probably more.
Bob?
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject, and good morning to the panel. My name is Bob Archibald. I work at Stevens & Lee. We do government affairs consulting for the Pennsylvania Gaming Alliance. To Representative Nielsen's point, bringing up that the subsets are prohibited by regulation, there's several things we're recommending here today that are prohibited only by regulation, not by the Act. Our suggestion is that we seek statutory changes to those things that would then supersede the regulation that exists now.
Thanks for the clarification. Continue with the testimony?
Okay, so
Or next person, or?
well, I got a couple more things for you.
Go ahead.
So the next thing that we had talked about is progressive games. And what a progressive game is a small count. Most of the time, it's a small count game like this that maybe has 300 or 400 tickets, and it offers it has a little card, maybe about this size, that may have 20 windows on it. Under the windows, it's either going to say loser or jackpot. So the hall sells this game, and it says you're either going to win $200 or you're going to win 100. Okay? If you win and they pull your number, you come up here and you say, okay, I want this one. It says you lose. So the consolation prize is 100. And then what they do is take that other 100 and it goes to the next game. So you pull the next game out. Now it's worth $300. Okay, and they play the game, pull a seal. If it says loser again, that person gets 100. Okay, and then the next game is worth 400. So there's a consolation prize, or there's the jackpot, and it just keeps going until somebody pulls the one that says jackpot on it.
And it's mandatory that somebody has to win.
Yes, yes, and a lot of times what happens is like if it gets up to $300. There's 300 tickets in this game, and in the game that you would play as a jackpot, 300 or 400 tickets, depending on which one. So you would have an opportunity nobody does it, but then the hall wouldn't allow it. Buy all the tickets and you could still not win. You'd only win $100. So the whole idea is to keep that money going, just like the lottery goes up every week, to bring the people back into the bingos for the fire companies to generate more money. It's something that's, a couple weeks ago when we talked about progressives for bingos, a progressive for bingo, the bingo's got to put the money up and hope that it doesn't get hit until they make enough money. A progressive in small games, that money's being set back from the games that are already being sold. Any questions on that?
Any other questions? Yep, Representative Mosser.
On that progressive, and you say there's windows like similar to that. How many windows would you be talking about?
Usually it's about 15. John, is that about right?
It can be as few as 6 and as many as 50.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we'll go down to. next
Okay,
person.
so my last thing is that one of the things that in our industry, you guys believe that we should pay attention to, and that is the accountability to the clubs' accountability to the money they take in. Department of Revenue, more liquor control, has decided that they cannot use any of the gross proceeds to buy ticket machines. A ticket machine is a machine that they maybe put it on a wall and all the tickets are put in there, and it tracks every dollar that goes in. Okay, and then what they do is they take the ticket to the bartender, and the bartender pays it out. There's point-of-sale software. There's a number of point-of-sale software systems out there that tracks all the gaming, all the sales in, just like they were selling a hamburger or a hot dog, by serial number. Department of Revenue, well, I can't say it's the Department of Revenue. Liquor Control will not allow the clubs to use the gross proceeds to buy these systems. We believe that's going to help out the clubs. We don't, believe it or not, we don't make a ton of money in these things because a lot of times they won't sell gambling because somebody's been stealing from them. So they put these machines in, and that helps them make it more accountable. So, so the idea right now is if they made $1,000 on this game, 60% has to be donated, and they're left with $400. They're trying to run the $400. Run the club with that $400. What we would propose is to allow the clubs to take that $1,000 and buy a ticket machine or buy accounting software or pay an accountant or do something so that somebody can pay attention besides the manager of what's going on with the money. And it's not allowed right now. We've gone from, they say it's okay, to, well, now you can do half, now you can't do any. And part of their reasoning is that it tracks beer sales and food sales also. So can they use the gambling money to track beer sales? It's just part of the process.
Is this another directive? Because it's certainly not part of the.
No, it's an interpretation from Liquor Control.
And it's frustrating because I would think we want as much electronic checks and balances as possible instead of human, not just for money that's not accounted for, but also to control the underage problem.
It tells them what, Liquor Control has a list of what they can spend it on.
All
That's not in there.
Questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Representative Nielsen, sure.
Yeah, right in realm where you're going. Because I saw right up the street here, the VFW up on 6th Street, they have all the machines there, and which makes it, because they had issues within the facility of this one might have money disappearing. And this kept it all tracking so the board can track it better.
Yes.
And we're saying that the LCB's interpretation is we don't need them?
No, that you can spend the
have
money. So if this game made $1,000, and let's say I sold 10 of them, okay? So that's $10,000. So I want to go out and buy a ticket machine, okay? I can only buy the ticket machine out of the club's net proceeds. Okay? They don't go out and buy them once a year. It's not that. They don't buy new software once a year. There may be some maintenance fees or something on the software, but all this is for tracking. And what they're doing is their interpretation is that it doesn't say it in the regulations that you can buy that equipment with it.
It doesn't say specifically that you can use those proceeds to do the accounting and all that.
Right, the gross proceeds, meaning that they're going to take it out off the top before they do the split.
Then I would assume that's part of the changes that we're seeking, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Diamond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Been a lot of numbers thrown around here, so I just want to clarify for the record for anybody who's watching at home. The game you've brought, you can't sell that in Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because it's a subset game.
Correct.
Okay. The winnings, the clubs take, none of that is taxed. Is that correct?
Is the profit tax? No. If the club's taxable, if it's an Elks or an Eagles, they pay a sales tax on purchasing it.
Right. So I'm interested in just clarifying where the Commonwealth gets a revenue stream out of these sorts of games.
They don't.
They don't at all.
No.
This is just to allow the clubs to be more financially secure.
Well, no, because the clubs are donating 60% of their money to the charities.
Correct. Correct.
And that's a big deal, especially in our area when they can't get a baseball field fixed and a Polish club donates money to get that out of their 60%.
Right. And that's benevolent, and I'm totally in favor of that. I just want to clarify that the Commonwealth is not deriving a revenue stream directly from these games other than sales tax in the
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, Representative Davis, Kolovich, Nelson, Warner, Deasy, Parker, and Flynn have joined the public hearing since we took roll call.
Okay, that's the end of my testimony.
Okay, we're up.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members.
Cliff notes.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
I got you. Staff, gallery. Mike indicated earlier, my name is Tony Devitz, and I'm part of the management team at Paramount Games for the sales department. We manufacture the pull tabs, not quite like these. We do the little paper slips that you tear open and still give the same kind of prizes. And they're used by fundraising and charities, nonprofits, taverns all across the country. We're located in Wheatland, Pennsylvania, and we are the only charitable gaming manufacturer in Pennsylvania. We began the company in 1995. Over those 21 years, we've grown from 3 employees to just shy of 100 as of today. Most of those people are Pennsylvania residents. We have a little joke where we're so close we can almost spit on Ohio. So we have a little over on both sides. We're proud of what the company has become. We're a positively recognized and respected employer in our community. We have distributors who sell our product in 15 states, including the neighbors Ohio, New York, West Virginia, Delaware, and Maryland. I grew up right here in Lebanon County, so I'm pretty proud to have a multi-million-dollar company that's able to furnish these kinds of things for the charities across our nation. Pennsylvania hosts at least 6,200 licensed entities, the clubs, the taverns, the charities that we're talking about this morning. My concern is that their continued success is predicated on a system that's not exactly user-friendly, and it's more restricted for those clubs, the taverns, and so forth. I'm going to step away from the cliff notes so that Representative Payne doesn't get upset with me. Those groups, well, I'm very proud to be able to say that surrounded today, I have 3 of my largest distributors. To my left is John Smith from Lancaster Bingo, and he is arguably the largest distributor in the country, and he is one of our customers. Unfortunately, at one point or another, I've probably said to them, or at least will, they're really not my customer. I take them to dinner. We talk real nice. We attend different events together. But really, the people who are my customer are those who sit in the seats in the bar stools, in the clubs, the Legions, the VFWs, the bingo halls. Those are the people I want to take care of. Those are your customers, too, because you wouldn't be sitting in those seats, and I wouldn't be sitting in this seat without them. We need to make sure they raise the money. Those are the men and women who have after-school programs for underprivileged children. They're the men and women who run into burning buildings. They're the men and women who go off to fight for our freedom. Those are our customers. And that's who we have to make sure to make more money for so they can do the charitable good that they want to do in our country, in our state. So, back to the Cliff Notes. There's approximately 13 larger manufacturers of small gaming in the United States. We are one of them. And every one of us has to submit to the Department of Revenue every game that we manufacture. We send a flare, which is similar to this. A flare is essentially the roadmap of the game. It tells you who's going to win what, how many win each time, and all the way down through. It tells you the ticket count, what your profit is, what your payout should be, all the pertinent information. I submit at least 50 of those a week to 2 young ladies in the Department of Revenue. If there's 13 of us in the country only doing 50 games, you're looking at least 33,000 games that they look at in a year's time. They do a fantastic job considering, but it's a little redundant at best. I can take this game, make it the exact same way, call it Pig Pile one day, Pig Pen the next day, and John Payne's Happy Game the next, but I have to submit it each and every time. There are states that consider that to be a family, so I only get it approved once, and then I can just keep sending it out onto the streets because it's already been approved. That's the kind of thing that we're recommending here in Pennsylvania. It's obviously going to be a lot easier on the Department of Revenue, and it's going to save them a little bit of money because they don't have the administrative nightmare that they have right now. There's only 3 states in the country that have you do the approvals. It's New York, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. What we suggest is what every other state does, and it's self-police. By self-policing, in Washington, for example, you can send in whatever you'd like, but if you have a problem, there's no less than a $100 fine going to come your way. Whether it's forgetting to put a flare in a bag or forgetting to put the state stamp onto a flare or something like that, you pay $100 automatically. So obviously, number one, from a financial standpoint, you don't want to do it. Number two, you don't want the other states to find out. Because if you're a manufacturer of small games of chance or charitable gaming, depending on where you are in the nation, the other states are going to find out as well. We have regulators come into our facility from Minnesota, North Dakota, Washington, and I think New York was there as well. They make sure the facility is the way it is, but all those people talk. And if you do something wrong, they definitely know it. So I would like to do what we're recommending is just sending in the new games, getting families approved, and then new faces and so forth that would just change to make things a lot easier on the revenue. The other issue we would like to discuss is the tavern gaming provisions. I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone sitting here that it's not exactly what the law initially intended. It's highly restrictive, it's over penal, and with only 51 or so licenses issued to date, you're going to be hard-pressed to find any of my games in any taverns across Pennsylvania. It's just not very attractive at all. We've drafted some suggestions as to how to change the law, a reduction in the licensing and renewal fees, fairer split in the net proceeds, much like Mike was talking about for the clubs, the reduction in the tavern game tax, the monetary penalties, the elimination of criminal penalties, all the way down through. We can't have some of these gaming violations negatively impact one's liquor license. The two of them just don't seem to go together. We have had discussion with our friends at the Tavern Association, and we are in line with their vision of the law. We're aware that the committee has reviewed the legislative draft of Representative Kurt Mazer, I believe. I don't wish to have anybody's name wrong. And he has taken aim at improving the tavern section of the law as well. We're willing to work with the taverns in support of that bill, and Representative Mazer as well. Ultimately, it's our goal to be a part of the advocacy process that eventually leads to the creation of a tavern law that's a little bit more attractive to the businesses in Pennsylvania. With certain changes, the tavern gaming can become a better source of entertainment and revenue, and remain some sort of source of revenue for the Commonwealth in and of itself. That concludes my testimony, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Representative Mosser?
On the family of games that you said, is there any draft language out there that you would have for the committee?
Yeah, I can try and find that for you.
Yeah, Representative Master, we do have a draft to clean up that section of the law. Again, that's regulatory language right now,
Right.
And I've shared that with the chairman's office, and we can certainly share it with you.
Just thinking about I certainly wouldn't be able to draft that language that would be all-encompassing to make sure that they...
Right, and just to clarify our intent and to clarify on Tony's remarks, what we're looking at is a suggestion that for games that go about having nothing more than a facelift done to them, the concept of the game remains the same, the prizes remain the same. It's redundant for the department to have to approve those over and over again. There are then truly new games that come into the state with new concepts, and our feeling as an association is those should be approved by the department for an initial play.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Question for you.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Van Courts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dietz, you mentioned the elimination of criminal penalties, and on page 4 you have that written down at the top. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
I don't know.
Chairman, I can answer that question. The small games was initially drafted and still exists today with significant monetary penalties and potential criminal prosecution for violation of that act. The Tavern Association and the Pennsylvania Gaming Alliance have talked. They support a lowering of those monetary penalties and elimination of the criminal provisions, and we support them in their quest to get that removed.
Okay, but if you have somebody running numbers in that tavern besides these other games, are you saying that we should let them go?
Well, that would be a violation of Title 18 gambling, not a violation of the Small Games Act. So that would not come under the small games penalties.
Okay, well, you're saying total elimination of criminal penalties?
In the Small Games Act, not in Title 18.
Okay, and how is this hindering you now? What's it doing to people now?
Well, we looked at the law, and in talking with our friends at the Tavern Association, obviously with 51 licenses issued over the last year or 2 years that the law has been in existence, it's not a very attractive business option for the taverns. So we looked at ways that we could suggest to the committee that may make it more attractive to them.
Let the chair hop in here real quick and just tell you that in the current draft of the legislation, the penalties are not eliminated. They are lowered, and they match the club's penalties. So they're all equal and the same.
Okay,
In the
thank
current
you, Mr.
draft.
Chairman.
Yeah. Representative Nelson?
Yes, my question was in regards to the family revision. Do you have some numbers or some efficiency improvement numbers that if we were able to implement the language to allow family approval, how much that would streamline and reduce from the several thousand? It would be helpful, I think, from a caucus perspective to see how we could improve that.
I can give you the numbers based on Paramount. I can certainly get that for you. And it takes, sometimes it'll take 2 days, sometimes it'll take 30 days to get a packet, and sometimes it'll be 50, and sometimes it'll be 150. But I can certainly get those numbers for you.
And it's quite subjective. I can look at 2 games. One will be declined, one will be approved. With 15 years ago, games weren't required to be submitted. We had some new people hired in the Department of Revenue, and one day we all got a letter saying you have to submit your games for approval.
Sounds like the letter that the casinos just got increasing their fees without anybody's knowledge.
Well, one of the things that when we met with Department of Revenue last year, they told us that they read in the law that it says that they have to approve the manufacturers, which is fine, but then they took it one step further. Well, if I have to approve the manufacturers, I have to prove what the manufacturers do. And that's how they got to where we're at today.
See if you can't get the information again to Josiah. We'll scan it, send it out to all the committee members. I think you hear the consensus so far is, whether it's Kurt's comments about, as long as it's a family and the same thing, Representative Nelson's the same way. It's like, I'm all for streamlining and supporting business. I'm also trying to make sure that the government agency is doing what's important, not just busy work or empire building, that this is why we need the employees. So
I was recently at Revenue for a completely different reason, and I was speaking to the two young ladies who look over the games, and they said, well, so how do these work? And I said, well, seriously? She goes, oh, yeah, we really don't have any idea how you do these. So I had to explain our games, and these are the people who are telling me whether or not the way I'm doing it is correct. And obviously, we don't want to poo-poo anyone, but I mean, that's a little difficult to swallow.
no problem. Finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We're up to John.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm last, so I'm supposed to go fast, correct?
You've noticed behind me there's fewer and fewer.
Yeah. My name's John Smith. I promise, it really is. And I'm the president and chief executive officer of Lancaster Bingo. We're based in Lancaster, Ohio, but we do have facilities in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Monroeville, right outside Pittsburgh. Lancaster Bingo was founded in 1983. We specialize in the distribution of bingo supplies, pull tabs, jar tickets, the game boards, and gaming equipment. In 33 years of operation, we've greatly expanded both our business model and our distribution area. In addition to Pennsylvania and Ohio, we also provide services in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. Our customer base is made up primarily of charitable organizations, clubs, fire departments, churches, nonprofits, taverns, and bars. We do have a successful bar business in the state of Ohio and Indiana. Proud to tell you Lancaster Bingo has become one of the largest distributors in the nation. Personally, I've been with the company 19 years. I'm one of the owners. I'm president, CEO. Prior to my time at Lancaster Bingo, I was senior vice president of a small community bank. I was twice elected to our city council at large in Lancaster. I've worked 4 years for a United States congressman, both in Washington and his district office. I have a great deal of respect for elected officials, and I know you all do it just for the money. In addition to advocacy, on behalf of the membership, one of the missions and goals of the Pennsylvania Gaming Alliance is to be an informational source for you in regard to gaming, climates, and other states we do business. We've handed out some flyers or folders. In those folders, this is a spreadsheet. These are the states that we do business in. It gives you a snapshot of how Pennsylvania stacks up against neighboring states, what's allowed, what's not, fees and things of that sort. Also in the file, there's a report from NAFTM, which is the North American Fundraising Ticket Manufacturers Association. They put an annual report together. It usually lags a year or two. It has information, as reported at least, of what type of charitable gaming is allowed, what type of gaming is allowed across the United States and Canada. It includes fees, taxes, licensing. So it's a pretty good source of information. Their website's on there. It would be something that we could certainly let Mr. Archibald know when the next report comes out, because it is some good helpful information. With 8 states Lancaster in Lancaster Bingo's footprint, we have a significant amount of experience with bingo, games of chance, in different jurisdictions. We've provided testimony and served on state-sponsored gaming commissions in several states. We feel it's our responsibility to work with our regulators and legislators to create a level playing field for the organizations who rely on bingo and small games of chance for their much-needed funding. So the goal of my testimony today is to highlight for you some of the major differences in the games of chance law in Pennsylvania compared to the other states we serve. I provided the committee with the Excel spreadsheet I mentioned. I'm hopeful that you will find this information helpful in understanding the diverse climates of gaming. I also hope we can offer some ideas that could be implemented here in Pennsylvania to improve Small Games Act and bolster the entertainment value, fundraising potential for the organizations and businesses that rely on these games. Specifically, I feel the legislature should eliminate the $35,000 weekly aggregate in prizes. That's what Mike mentioned originally. No other state except for Illinois has this type of restrictive language. I also feel the 4,000 ticket limit should be eliminated. It really serves no purpose. Whether it's got 40 tickets, 4,000, or 40,000 tickets, there's a defined profit and payout in those in each and every deal. And as long as it meets the 65-35 payout in Pennsylvania, it shouldn't matter how many tickets are sold. Laws are clear on what type of games can and should be sold in Pennsylvania. It should be the responsibility of the licensed distributors and manufacturers to only sell games that conform. That is how every other state we do business in regulates games, and none of them require games to be submitted and approved. The rules are the rules, and it is the responsibility of the licensee to comply. If we're found not to be in compliance, we risk fines, disciplinary actions, up to and including revocation. It's a pretty strong deterrent to selling games that aren't legal. Submission and approval of games is just unnecessary and a subjective step that should be eliminated. Also, other states that surround Pennsylvania allow small games a chance pull tabs with progressive jackpots, as Mike mentioned. This feature allows nonprofit organizations to build jackpots and compete with the giants from the for-profit gambling. Okay, off subject a second. Anybody ever see Vegas Vacation? All right, so Rusty Griswold wins 4 cars on 4 spins, progressive jackpots. We're not giving away cars, but we'd like to give away a little cash. I'd like to add that since 1988, when the Small Games of Chance bill was enacted, Pennsylvania has experienced explosive growth in gambling. Horse tracks with electronic gaming devices. There are land-based casinos throughout the Commonwealth, and who knows how many gray machines out there. It's time for the Small Games of Chance Act to be amended and allow for the licensed organizations the opportunity to compete. The nonprofits are doing great things in your communities, and they need your support. In closing, on behalf of the Pennsylvania Gaming Alliance, I want to thank the committee for the chance to spend some time with you today, share our experiences and suggestions. We hope that you have found the information we provided interesting and helpful. We stand ready to be of assistance to the committee as an informational resource. Anytime we look forward to, and anytime we can, we look forward to working with you to improve PA Small Games of Chance. It's part of our business to represent the industry. The charities can't pull together to do this themselves for whatever reason. So we're the for-profit side of the nonprofit business, and we'd like to offer our assistance any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Representative Moser.
A couple questions. When you go into a club and they have the ticket machines there, is that supplied by the distributor, or is that bought by the club itself, or how does that work?
That's an excellent question, and 9 times out of 10, the club is buying that machine. There's some financing oftentimes available to them, but that's another one of those purchases we'd like to be able to have on the top line. I'll speak to Ohio. Ohio looks at ticket vending machines and ticket tracking software as a perfect way to keep track of cash, and these tickets are cash. It's just what they are. They allow that expense to be taken off before the charitable split, but it has to be documented.
And it just makes sense because in the long run, it's just more money for the charities and less money walking away from the
And you're
club.
talking between $4,000 and $8,000 for a ticket machine. So we can't go into, all of us have 1,000 charities. We can't go into each one and give them a ticket machine. It's just not financially possible in our.
And it's also one less person handling cash,
Sure.
which is helpful.
What is a seal card game?
A seal card game, there's games that come in, we call it box of tickets, a deal of tickets. Some of them have instant winners, so you open the ticket and you realize whether you won instantly or not. And then there's games that have what we call holders, whether they're the jar tickets that Tony's group manufactures or a game like this. This is an actual seal card. So what a seal card does is it makes sure that the charity gets their money out of the game because the big money's given away at the end. So all the tickets are sold. There might be some big dollar tickets. There might be a $500 instant winner in a seal card game, but usually the $500 winner is going to be reserved till the end. So all the tickets are sold. They pop the seal, and then that cash is given away, and it really keeps the people at the club or at the fire department or wherever from saying, "Oh, hey, don't buy out of that thing because the big money's gone." The big money goes when it's
still
over.
a signer left or not opportunity.
Yes, sir.
There's obviously still instant winners throughout the game, but you're still holding for the ultimate money at the end.
All right. One last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The number of charitable licenses is amazing to me when you look at this chart. Pennsylvania, as compared to the rest of the states, we're at 6,265. The next largest one is Indiana with 3,000. I mean, less than half. Is it because other states don't necessarily make them have licenses, or why is that? I mean, the numbers are really different.
I was kind of surprised by that as well, but that's a number that the Department of Revenue reported. So it could be that they look at the number of charities that could apply or could qualify for a license under the Act versus the number that are actually licensed under the Act. I can't really speak to that.
Okay.
I was surprised by that number, though, too.
Yeah.
They may even take one-day event license holders into that number as well.
Oh,
But
festivals.
Pennsylvania is one of the largest.
Right.
You also have to recognize the fact that there are more VFWs. It's Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Germany are the three top VFW post holders in the country, in the world, actually, obviously, bringing Germany in.
And Pennsylvania also has the volunteer fire departments, which more prevalent here than in other jurisdictions.
We also have the Sons of Italy, the this, the that. So there's a lot more here in Pennsylvania than there is. There's more organizations overall, federated clubs, that kind of thing, than there is in the other states.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Clunk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I'm not sure who would be the best person to answer this question, but as a piggyback on Representative Mosser's question about the point-of-sale machines, how many clubs out there that you guys service and organizations actually use these, and what are you hearing as the benefits of those? Are more clubs and organizations switching to them? And in other states, you spoke a little bit about Ohio, Mr. Smith. Can you talk about what other states are doing in relation to the regulatory requirement that, or at least different LCV agents coming in and saying, no, you can't use that charitable money for the purchase of that machine? Where are other states in relation to that?
Sure. I'll touch on it, but then I'm going to ask Mike to follow up.
Okay.
So Ohio, we're regulated by the Attorney General's office. So what Ohio will do is they'll go visit a club and their bookwork won't be in order. So they'll say, hey, we're going to fine you $10,000, or you buy a ticket tracking software So they give them a choice on the settlement. What we find is more and more of these organizations realize that, it's a privilege to game, one. Two, they count on that money. They don't want violations because it could affect their liquor license at some point. So we've got more and more organizations wanting ticket tracking software. Plus, with the electronic reporting now required in Pennsylvania, it really does it for them. I mean, if it manages your inventory, it manages your cash, it can manage your food and beverage if you want them to. I mean, they are, as you would imagine with technology, it keeps evolving and becoming a greater and greater tool for these organizations. I think Pennsylvania is the only state we do business in that doesn't allow it as a before the split purchase.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, a quick follow-up. So to that, the clubs and organizations that are using these point-of-sale machines and tracking software, have they seen, decrease in fraud, increase in profits, increase in potential sales tracking, and is it making it easier in that relationship with you when it comes to ordering to know what games are actually, moving off the shelves?
Yes, and yes. I mean, in all, to be frank with you, it's like any other computer. It's as good as the data that you're putting into it. But if you've got a group that is committed to that process, it gives different levels of approval. So whoever's the gaming chairman can look at everything. It knows if a bartender is short on tickets. It knows the reports are there. So it's a great management tool. The people, and Mike's got a very successful system that he puts out. And again, I'll let him, if it's okay with the chairman, I'll let him chime in. But everything improves in that organization. They have money they never knew they had. The bad apples leave because they don't want to work in a regulated environment. And it pays for itself pretty quickly.
We right now probably have about, 300-400 systems out in Pennsylvania. And most of the time we get a phone call after they just got rid of the manager because the manager just stole. Okay, so they put these out, and a game that has 4,000 tickets, they ring every ticket. Somebody wants 20 tickets, they ring them in. At the end of the game, it's saying that you're short 200 tickets. Okay, so people make mistakes, but at least it's going to give you a pattern. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that we've had clubs anywhere from 8 to one club that told us they were over 50% more profit to the club because they were able to track it. And sometimes we lose bartenders because they don't like the system, but I think it's more that their income goes down because now we're paying attention. And even a lot of times the people that are running clubs are not don't have some business knowledge. So this really helps them by just knowing what reports to look at to give them business knowledge and to at least pay attention to what's going on a little bit. Because doing it by hand, they have no clue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Courts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your testimony, and gentlemen of the panel. I'm referring to this chart that's put out here, and a follow-up to Representative Mosser. 6,200 licenses in Pennsylvania generates, in 2014 tax dollars, $268,000. Compare that to Ohio with 1,700 licenses, one-third less, and you get 10 times more in taxes. And drop down to Indiana, where you have 3,000 licenses. They bring in about $3.7 million in taxes. Can I assume that if we would do what you have said there and remove the restrictive language, that we could possibly generate $6 million in taxes for the state of Pennsylvania? Or is that a false assumption?
Well, it's not necessarily a false assumption. There are taxes. Well, you can see the taxes and fees as part of this. Also, I would look at that NAFTA report, and it clearly spells it out. The $35,000 weekly aggregate that's a big impediment to allow, like Mike says, it's, if a club opens if their week is Monday through Saturday or Sunday, if they're at their $35,000 limit by Thursday, and they're abiding by the law, their 3 busiest days, they're not selling any product.
So again, if we remove this restrictive language, can we anticipate additional taxes to the tune of possibly $6 million? Anybody on the panel? I mean, I'm looking at your chart.
John,
The answer is we'll definitely anticipate additional revenue. The clubs will, the taverns will, we will. And that's one of the reasons why we have legislation to remove that restriction. Look, in all the time that I've been here, I've never been more amazed to find us put restrictions in that restrict people to give money to charities and for the state to make more money, while at the same time really not safeguarding or regulating, underage gaming or any other issue. I'm sure there was some rationale on why they picked that number. Then again, I'm sure there wasn't, having been here for 14 years. But it's time to remove that restriction. It's time to change the Small Games Act that was passed with all these handicaps and challenges and penalizing a tavern owner on their liquor license instead of on their gaming license. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. If you have a violation on the gaming side, then let's make the penalties on the gaming side, and after 3 strikes, 5 strikes, whatever it is, you lose your license to game for, 6 months or a year, so be it. But the liquor's not involved. The liquor penalties are liquor penalties, and gaming penalties are gaming penalties. Clearly, we want to remove that restriction. We want every organization, taverns, restaurants, clubs, whoever, to be able to make the money they need to make, and for the Commonwealth to make that extra revenue. So that was the intent of the original small games changes that we're looking at doing, and to give every organization an equal playing field with more games and more prize limits. And guess what? We're no different at the end. The state makes more too. I'm yet trying to figure out how that's a bad idea, that the individual business makes more money and the state makes more money, and yet somehow there's a problem with that.
And it's better regulated.
Yeah, well, we over-regulate, and then the other problem is we never go back and look at things. I mean, we talked 81 on bingo, 89 on the other. I get it. You don't want to look at it every year, but, on a 5 or 10 or 20-year cycle, is that not a good idea to go look and make sure we're staying competitive with the surrounding states? Make sure that our tavern people have the tools they need to do their job, and it benefits the charities on a lot of these cases. Representative Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman. As I look at this chart, which is very helpful for me, I just wanted to gain your perspective. And I know a lot of people have meetings for 10 o'clock, but it seemed to me a greater correlation in the limiting or the restriction of the fees paid is that the state of Pennsylvania has a $125 set fee, where a lot of these other states that are having higher revenue are sharing in a percentage of sales or net sales, be it a percentage of income for sales or a percentage of sales price. And not only as part of the $35,000 payout, but wanted to get your perspective of, we seem to be the only one with a set 125 cap, and we're not necessarily sharing in the prosperity or creating an opportunity for those organizations to raise more money as part of that process. I just wanted to get the perspective of the panel.
My only caution to you is it's easier to, if you want to look for additional licensing revenue, I would look at the for-profit side before the nonprofit side of it. And with that being said, if you were to scale it, make sure you cap it, because I know of charities in Ohio, for instance, that are paying $35,000 a year in licensing fees, and it doesn't take the Attorney General's office any more time to audit that organization than it does to audit the one that's paying $500 a year for that license because of the electronic reporting and things that are available.
Do you see that as a significant factor in the difference in revenue streams between some of these other states where Pennsylvania's at 268,000 and Ohio's at, 2.6 million?
The hardest, the reason I'm struggling to answer that is because I don't know what that 6265 number that they report as licensees is made up of, and I don't know what the handle is, the gross revenue. But yes, the fee to the charity is
That's fine. That's fine.
When people want to raise the licensing fees of the organizations, we always recommend they raise the licensing fees to the for-profits instead.
Okay. Representative Nelson, all right?
Yes, thank you.
Representative Mosser, and I want to add that Representative McKenzie's joined the hearing.
And I don't even know if you'll have an answer to this, but when you sell the point-of-sale systems, you say you sell the systems. Are there like many of the taverns, especially or restaurants that could get into the tavern gaming, already have existing point-of-sale systems? Are there point-of-sale systems that are better suited for? They have modules that they put on. I'm using like Aloha software or digital dining or existing point-of-sale systems that are out there in the market
Aloha
now.
has a add-on, okay? Our system was designed, our programmers actually designed ours for the industry. In other words, it'll sell beers, it'll sell food, it sends stuff to the kitchen just like a normal one, but it tracks every serial number. There's John has a system that does the same thing. Aloha doesn't do it the greatest, but they did it as a module. But yeah, there are standalone systems, not necessarily one that would be built into to some of the ones that the taverns have, but there are smaller standalone systems that can be used.
Okay, thank you.
And speaking to the taverns, if I could, Mr. Chairman, we do sell to taverns and bars in Indiana. We've got several hundred customers there, and the biggest difference is the tax, the way that it was set up here in Pennsylvania with the tax. In Indiana, they pay 10% for the privilege to do it versus 72 here by the time you get the 65 and the 7% sales tax and everything else. And it's pretty big business in Indiana.
Thank you.
Sure. We are fortunate. Representative Mosser has been on both sides of that counter in the tavern restaurant business, and I have to tell you, he and I agree 99 out of 100% on these issues, and I'm very proud of that, and we're committed to trying to fix this. Although in 14 years, I think this is the fourth or fifth fix, and that's frustrating. It's also frustrating for some of the leaders that say you want to move another bill that, we've tried to fix. But I point out that all the changes that left the House were good changes. The last round of small games were not changed in the House. The fee, tying it to the liquor license, all that stuff was done in the other chamber. So hopefully this time we can put together a very good small games bill that includes a variety of things and helps the taverns and the clubs and all the other facilities, and at the end of the day benefits the business, the nonprofits, and the state. Any other questions before we adjourn? If not, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.